Sefer Amala Shal Torah, which is in the back of Pesach Vayikra. So we discovered the secret. Come a little closer. Too much hispashtus here. We discovered the counterintuitive concept of Pesach. The Arizal says that a pun on the word Pesach is Pesach. The mouth speaks, meaning that part of the freedom that we're meant to feel, pi-chayros, that we're meant to feel and enact and do on Pesach is Pesach is pi-chayros hadibur. Pi-chayros hadibur. It's a new concept, really. Freedom of speech. Not the freedom of speech of the U.S. Constitution, the freedom of speech, which is, why do I say counterintuitive? Because one tends to think of a matzav of Geula, or a good matzav is when you're contained and everything is concentrated in one place, and a matzav of Golus is when you're spread out all over the place. Hence, when we're in Eretz Yisrael, we're in a matzav of Geula. When we go to Bavel, so we're in a matzav of Golus, spread out into Golus. So when it comes to Dibur, if you wanted to take that metaphor over to Dibur, so the deeper that's inside of our nefesh, the unspoken word, you would think would be a situation of Geula, and then when you speak it out, your words went to Golus. But Reb Tzadok here, and really in the name of the Arizal, is telling us that the opposite is true. That Haitzia mimasker nafshi lohoidois es shemecha. Take it out of the masker. There's a prison in my nefesh. The prison in my nefesh. Masker nafshi. My nefesh is imprisoned, and I can't give hodah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not because I'm living in Siberia or in communist Russia, or it's not because I'm living amongst goyim that don't appreciate me talking about lahoidos shemecha. It's a nefesh issue. My nefesh is in Golus. The Golus it's the other way around. The freedom to be able to speak is called Geula. So not the freedom of speech. I could say whatever the heck I want. It's not that. It's that's Dakas. That might be part of this. It might be part of it. It might be sort of a counter part of it. But what we're talking about is, are we indeed free? Are we indeed free? If a person can say what they feel, then there's a certain Geula in that. So in the Geulas Mitzrayim, when we went out of Mitzrayim, so there was obviously the Avdus Pi-chayros, the Yagoin. We went out from Avdus to pi-chayros physically. We were not building bricks and mortar any longer. We weren't building the pyramids. We weren't being enslaved and under the subordination of evil people. We were free in that sense. But the ultimate freedom came when we were able to be mesaper. We're able to tell the story, Yetzias Mitzrayim. I'm thinking like a lot of times when something good happens until it's over completely, like you don't talk about it. I don't mean because we're worried about ayin horror or something like that. Just like it ain't over till it's over.
It's also maybe because it's like it's a real perspective once it's
enough time to. It's a real perspective, true. But it's also there's you're not free to speak about something until it's in the past tense. You look how many years it took people to speak about the Holocaust. People that went through the Holocaust. It was a silent memory. That if you grew up in that world with your parents or your grandparents in that world, it was taboo to talk. You're not allowed to talk. They didn't want to talk. Memory was there. Memories don't heal. The time does something, but memories don't heal. And it took a long time, maybe even very recently, until people started to talk about it and write about it as an example. So here you have a case of avdus and sort of freedom, pi-chayros haguf, from that avdus, but you didn't have a Pesach. Didn't have a Pesach. I don't know, today you have a Pesach. Today we could speak about the Holocaust, we could speak about the Romans, we could speak about the Babylonians, but somebody who went through it, so that the avdus is so deep that it affects the dibur. So there's different levels to Geula, and one of the levels to Geula is not just that now I'm not working anymore, hey, I'm free, I can work, I can walk the streets, but can I actually talk about it? So that's the Pesach.
Is some of that relating to when one really wants to speak about something, maybe a little bit, say, psychological, when one wants to speak about something really, really on the inside, so sometimes it's hard to feel like you have somebody who you can trust to really open up. And maybe in the case of what we're saying, say the Holocaust, it was, not that I can speak, what was really happening there on the inside, but maybe if people were questioning, they were questioning where was God, and if this was what was going on the inside, how could you possibly find somebody that you could say that to?
Yep, that might be part of it. I don't know if it's the whole thing. I think part of it is also that there was a lot of guilt associated with it. Decisions had to be made by people in order to survive, to do things which maybe on some level is perfectly understandable, and on their own personal level, if you take somebody's soup, you could have killed the person. If you don't, you can die yourself. So it's who wants to talk. So like it could be that there's whole museums being created, and maybe they're even important to try to get the story out. But that's the story. That's the big story. The personal story that people went through is
it's a history. It's a history
and the story. And we know. We who grew up around that understand how there was a certain non-speaking, a certain silence which was never broken. As children, just never broken. We're not allowed to go there. So that's the lack of freedom, even though there's freedom. There's independence, but it's not necessarily freedom. Maybe it can't even be achieved. Maybe it takes a couple of generations. I don't know. I remember I might have told the story where there's a yid by the name of, I'm sure he's not alive anymore, but years and years ago, it was Pesach Seder. He was a rav of some small city in Romania during the Holocaust, and then he was taken into the concentration camps. And a pretty hush of a person. And when he came to America, wasn't somebody who spoke English. He always spoke Yiddish, big beard. So in those days, he would go around in a Greyhound bus like somebody other Mishalachim would come into a city and get $1, $2, $5. And used to stay at our house. And then I became a Rav in Buffalo, so he stayed in our house, my house, as a Rav. That was already like the last couple of years. I presume he died. That time it seems like he was like 80, 90 years old. But it was of interest. I had just gotten the Sefer Mimamakim that had just come out, which was Shiloh's and Shuvas of the Holocaust. And he would always speak about the Holocaust in the sense of, talking about the fire of the Holocaust and Amalek, and this, not personally, but he would always speak about it when he would speak. Good speaker. At least looked like a good speaker. I don't think I understood what he was saying, but he looked like a good speaker, screaming and everything. So the speaker. But I remember showing him the Sefer Mimamakim, Shiloh's and Shuvas of the Holocaust. If the question comes up of there's enough food there's not enough food for all my kids. Should I give it all to one kid, or should I divide it evenly? Questions. So like fascinating questions. The whole generation was fascinated by this Sefer. So I showed him the Sefer. He says, "Yeah, I know the Sefer," and he threw it on the floor. It's like he threw it away. So he says the whole Sefer is a bluff and an insult to everybody who went through it. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that was his emotional reaction. He says, "Who asked Shiloh's He was Shiloh's like, oh, Rabbi, I have X amount of food. What should I? Who was in that kind of a situation? Avodim hayidu. Avodim hayidu. They're like a screw. Somebody turned it that way, went that way. Somebody went this way, there was this way. And his point was to me at that time to go articulate this as an intellectual exercise of this Shiloh, that Shiloh. Nobody's holding by that. Yeah, maybe the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody's holding by that. He thought the Sefer was an insult to survivors. Ad kedei kach. I picked it up off the floor. For me. It was because of my generation. It was a valuable Sefer, but that was his ragesh. So what we're saying is that the Pesach is an expression of freedom, which is an expression of Geula, which is a lot deeper than the Geula itself. Now, Reb Tzadok says here, Ki mikoydem haya hadibor begolus, ki yadua. Dalkein amar Moshe Rabbeinu, olav shalom, that Moshe Rabbeinu, before the Geula, his statement was, Loi ish devarim anoichi, and I cannot speak. Dibor was begolus. Golus, counterintuitively, was inside. Moshe Rabbeinu had so much insight that wasn't something that he could articulate. But if you were in Zoche, what happened to Moshe Rabbeinu's stutter? It went away. Yitzias Mitzrayim. What happened to he didn't need Aaron to speak for him any longer. Once there was a Yitzias Mitzrayim, because there was a Geulas Hadibur. So Misha Zoche lahasig ha'or Yitzias Mitzrayim. Shehu Yitzias Hadibor Migolus. We understand that the neshama is manifested in Dibor. Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim. And how does that come out? It comes out in Dibor, not in not having to go to work. In Dibor. Almana, the Malbim says, a widow is a lashon of Elam. She's entrapped now in a situation that she's an Elam. By Yidoim Aharon. What can I speak about? Really, it would just be words. It would be empty words. There's what's in my nefesh. Aaron said, is not something that can come out. It'd be silly, be fake. But by Yitzias Mitzrayim, Shu Yitzias Hadibur Migolush Misayrer B'chol Shana. Ba'osas Man, there's a special hisayrus of Geulas Hadibur, which takes place all the time, every year, at the time of Pesach. Ki yadua mikdushas hazmanim, yuchal laharbais diburim kirtzainai. There's a special siyata d'shmaya that the dibur can come right out. I'm free. There's a ruach of pi-chayros on Pesach night. Hence, kol hamarbe l'saper b'yitzias Mitzrayim, harei zeh meshubach. Marbe l'saper, but you see a Mitzrayim or Shamati remez. It's Yadua whenever Reb Tzadok says v'shamati, he means he heard it from the Yizbitcher Rebbe. Shamati remez, he says I heard a remez v'yashuvu v'yachanu lifnei Pi-chayros. Let's look at the pasuk for a second. Chaim pointed out this pasuk right away. Bal-tshuva. The pasuk says in B'Shalach, right after they went out of Mitzrayim, here they left Mitzrayim. They traveled for 2 days. Then Vaychazek Hashem is slave Paroi Melech Mitzrayim, but Yirdof Achrei Bnei Yisrael. That the Mitzrayim, Paroi and the Mitzrayim decided to chase the Bnei Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael Yotzim b'Yad Ramah. Right, they went out with Yad Ramah. Vayirdofu Mitzrayim Achareihem. Mitzrayim ran out after them. I got interested. Yirdofu Mitzrayim. The Mitzrayim ran after them. Vayirdofu Mitzrayim Achareihem. Mitzrayim itself ran after them. Vayasigu oisam, and they caught them, or they caught up to them. Choinim al hayam, They were right on the sea, on the beach. Kol sus rechev paro of Rosh v'chelai. Where were they? Pi-chayros lifnei bal-tshuva. They were al Pi-chayros lifnei bal-tshuva. At this place, here's the water in front of them, as you know, the Mitzrayim behind them. Vayisu b'nei Yisrael seinehem, v'hinei Mitzrayim noisei achreihem, vayiru moed, vayitzaku. A little bit earlier in the parsha, it says, it identifies this more clearly. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe lemor daber o b'nei Yisrael. This was actually Hashem's plan. Let's go back a little. Yud Daled Aleph daber o b'nei Yisrael vayashuvu. Let's sit. Vayashuvu, return. Vayachanu, let them backtrack. Vayashuvu lifnei Pi-chayros. So this was actually they were caught in a trap, but this was actually a strategy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let them go back. Vayachanu lifnei Pi-chayros, which is bein migdol uvein hayom lifnei bal-tshuva nichchay tachanu al hayom. That's where I should have began. So Hashem said to Moshe, Daber Hashem al Moshe, let them go to Pi-chayros, bein migdol, bein hayom, lifnei bal-tshuva, nichchay tachanu al hayom, va'omar paro lifnei Yisrael nevuchim heim ba'aretz. Sagar aleim hamidbar, let Paro think that now we're really stuck. Shizakti yislei Paro v'radav achreim. Okay. Rashi says here, interesting, Nekuda, where was this Pi-chayros geographically? Yachnu Pi-chayros, and Torah is very medactic on this. Lifnei Pi-chayros, bein migdol, bein hayom. Like very medactic in the geography. Lifnei bal-tshuva, nichchay tachanu al hayom. Says Rashi, Pi-chayros hu pitoim. Pi-chayros hu pitoim. So it's going to look back to where we started from. Can you do me a favor, the Rabbi Haber's Tzhuva?
Pitom was a city that was in quicksand, right? Pitom was a city that was built on quicksand?
Pitom was a city that the Jews built.
Right, the Midrash says it had to built it.
Seder. I'm saying, maybe, I don't know if all the Midrashim are compatible, but this was the city exactly that they were avodim. Yeah, thank you. Who Pitom? Okay, so if it's Pitom, so it's Pitom. They built Pitom and Ramses, right? So that's what the Jews built. They lived in Goshen and they built Pitom and Ramses, the pyramids for the Egyptians. So if it's Pi-chayros, why is it Pitom? Achshav nikra Pi-chayros. Al Shem shenasu sham b'nei chayrim. So it now started being called Pi-chayros. V'hev shnei sloim gevoyim zekufim v'hagai shebineim kari Pi-hasloim. So there's a certain cleft between two big rocks called Pi-chayros, but it's only now called Pi-chayros. It was really called Pitom. Pitom and Ramses had a name change due to the incident. The name change is gewaldig, because Pi-tom, my mouth is shut. Pi-chayros, my mouth is free. The Geula that took place at Pi-chayros, that's not where the Geula took place. The Geula took place when they left Mitzrayim, or the Geula took place after the Kriyas Yamsuf. What was this particular Geula of chayros? What was a particular chayros? Chayros apparently went b'seirugin. What was the chayros that took place in Pitom? That it went from Pitom without a, not Pitom, Pitom, top above, man. One from Pitom, from my mouth is shut. We were avodim to Pi-chayros. Hey, now I can talk.
Now I can complain more.
And they complained. You know.
The rest of the Sivur Shalom speaks about it, that the process, Pesach was a process. That's why you have 7 days of Pesach. It's continuous.
Of chayros. So the chayros was Pi-chayros. Pi-chayros. It came from a place of chayros. Lifnei bal-tshuva. Bal-tshuva was a who nishar, says Rashi, mikol elihei Mitzrayim. This was a leftover of the Avodah Zarahs that weren't killed in the Eser Makos, that weren't destroyed. Kedei lahatos and shemer kashi yoroisa. So here they are, Pi-chayros, but I'm just trying to understand, trying to imagine this. I'm trying to imagine the value of taking the Jews, the Jewish nation, right after they get out of Egypt, circling them back by a Tzhuva v'sachanu al Pi-chayros, taking them back to their place of Amish, like to the place of slavery. This is like, it should be, the Torah later says that the derech that I'm taking you on, you should never go back that way. Lo yashuvun, right? You should never go back. All of a sudden, not only are we're going back 2 days later, and we're looking at the pyramids, Pito, new name now, Pi-chayros, didn't feel so Pi-chayros because the Egyptians were running after us. And the whole strategy of this was that Paro said, okay, you see, that was the Jews. They're trying to run away. They're ending up right back in their same misgeret that they were running away from, as we see so true by every psychological situation. Coming right back to it. So I had this thought. Let me just share it. Maybe it's simple. Maybe it's not true. One or the other. But you always wonder about this. When the Rambam in Hilchos Tzhuva says, the famous Rambam in Hilchos Tzhuva, Ezu hi tshuva gemurah, that when would one's tshuva be considered tshuva gemurah? Zeh shebal yadai davar sha'avar by ve'efshir b'yadai lasais u'pirish v'lo yasem mipnei tshuva. So the Rambam says that there's many steps, as he goes on to say. This is kind of like out of order, but this is the introduction to the tshuva process. Tshuva process includes stopping to do the chet. It includes kabbalah ala osid. I'm not going to do the chet anymore. Someone has a sinful relationship with a woman. And then time passes, and he finds himself in the same place with that woman. Who I made ba'avasai, and he hasn't changed, says the Rambam. The same feelings towards her that I had before. Ubakoyach gufa, I haven't gotten. It's not like, well, then I was 21 years old, now I'm 80. No, it's the same thing. Bakoyach gufa. Ubedina sha'avar, it's even in the same place. So there you are, just as young on the French Riviera with the same woman that you once did an avera with. The only difference between then and now is pirish. This time he says no. V'loy avar zehu bal-tshuva gemurah, says the Rambam. That's called a bal-tshuva gemurah. Usha Shlit'a avar, that's why Shlomo Melech said, Zecharas barecha b'mei b'chureisecha. It's better to do tshuva when you're young. Ad asher lo yavoyu yimei ra v'giya shanim asher toiber eidli b'hev chayfetz. Okay, you can do tshuva when you retire, but that's not tshuva really, that's just regret. It's helpful, he says it does something, but it's not tshuva gemurah. Tshuva gemurah is where I'm back in the same place. And if he doesn't do tshuva, until he gets old, okay, it's not real tshuva, but Ba'alasai does do something about tshuva. We can come to Shemayim, an old man on his deathbed does tshuva, you can come to Shemayim and they'll say he's a bal-tshuva. He's a bal-tshuva, but you're bal-tshuva, but you're not a transformed person in the way the Rambam is explaining to us we should be a bal-tshuva gemurah. That's different. Helpful even if you do tshuva on your deathbed. Yeah, your avodos are nimchal, but that's not the tachlis of tshuva. You would think that's a pretty good thing. All your avodos are nimchal. Not good enough. We're talking about pi-chayros, I think. When we're talking about a transformation in place, bal-tshuva gemurah, so we're talking about a certain freedom that was achieved, and that's a whole different. That's a bal-tshuva gemurah. Meaning, everybody's always asking on this Rambam, what do you mean? He's supposed to go back? How does he even let himself? He was yachid with this woman. How does he go back to that place? Which reminds him of, you're going back to the places of your averas, like a Meshuggah goes into the same bar, into the same place, into the same, like what? Like, who's allowed to test yourself? The Rambam doesn't say you're allowed to test yourself. He's not recommending that somebody does this. I don't think he's saying that, okay, now find the woman and see test yourself. I don't think that's what he's saying. What he's saying is that theoretically, and if it happens practically, that's if you want to understand the barometer of truth, if you want to understand the truth of transformation, so you could only understand this when you're in the exact same situation that you were before, and it's a whole different situation now. Situation's the same, but I've changed. So I understand that kol zman, that this sinner cannot look at this woman in the face, and maybe he never should, he's not free. He might be some kind of bal-tshuva, and he might be a tzaddik, and admirable that you've pushed yourself away from the avera, but free you're not. Not a different person, not a bal-tshuva gemurah. I'm not a bal-tshuva gemurah. Maybe you're bal-tshuva gemurah. It's a hard. You're talking about the highest madrega a human being could get to, bal-tshuva gemurah. And we're not talking about somebody who was not frum. We're talking about the Rambam refers to frum people here in this chapter, to averas also. But a bal-tshuva gemurah goes against the whole idea that people actually never change. He's talking about that type of a change. I just want to enter into this that's called freedom. So what happens is you're coming around to the same place that you started. But I'm coming around that ani ish acher v'ani loy oisoi ha-ish shechata, as the Rambam says a couple of halachas later. Ani ish acher v'eni oisoi ha-ish shechata. I'm not the same person anymore, so it's not the same dynamic that's going on over here.
Pasuk that I mentioned says truth. Truth. Hashem, it's not just physically going. Like it seems like He wants you to do Tzhuva now.
So what does it mean, right? So what does it mean to go to Pitom back? I took you out of Mitzrayim, but did I take Mitzrayim out of you? By Yirdefu Mitzrayim achareihem. You hear it? By Yirdefu Mitzrayim achareihem. It wasn't about the Egyptians, it was about Egypt.
It's within themselves.
The Mitzrayim, by Yirdefu Mitzrayim achareihem. They're going and they're taking Mitzrayim with them. Yirdefu Mitzrayim achareihem. So, have you been cured? You have relief. We're on the run. You see that they haven't been cured because the first thing they say is Hamli Bli, Ein Kvarim b'Mitzrayim. No place to be buried in Mitzrayim when you bring his. You see that they're still not just the mentality, they haven't been cured. So if they haven't been cured, Hashem says, okay, Vayashuvu. Let's do the Rambam's process of Vayashuvu, and they'll stand al Pi-chayros, and Pi-tom will become Pi-chayros.
Now, in their case, it wasn't a Tzhuva. The element, the component exists in Tzhuva Shleima, the component exists in Yitzias Mitzrayim.
Right. I'm not saying this is Tshuva, making a mashal. It's a form of Tshuva in the sense of growth. You can't be I can take you out of bondage, but I can't take the bondage out of you. This was the sugya that I've been dealing with lately for some reason. This is the mistake, if you will, of Abraham Lincoln, because he freed the slaves. That's great, I guess. But where was the program? And by the way, that I believe historically was the argument. Democrats and Republicans at the time of Abraham Lincoln. You're gonna, even if you hold that all men are equal before the law, and even if you hold that they should be freed, but you need a program. Don't you know the Rambam? The Rambam says that Klal Yisrael had to dray around in the Midbar for 40 years. That was the emancipation program. You need a program. You can't just be free. So there was, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a program of pi-chayros over here, and the program is where you actually, I'm not a slave any longer, because ain't only ela badas, and avdus is badas, so vayeshuvu al pi-chayros. So the pitom had to become pi-chayros. That's, just while I'm here, I just wanted to share with you that in the next parsha, in Yisro, so the Torah tells us that Yisro came to visit Moshe v'Yishma. Yisro heard Mashmua Shamu Uva Kriyas Yamsuf u'Milchemas Amalek. He heard about Kriyas Yamsuf and he heard about Milchemas Amalek. So Yisro crawls out of his castle somewhere in Midyan in the Midbar, and he goes to see his son-in-law and his children, Moshe and the Bnei Yisrael, and whatever happened here, and what's the story. And Moshe Rabbeinu tells him the whole story. So he hears about the Kriyas Yamsuf and the Milchemas Amalek. So here's this Pope who hears that everything that happened to Klal Yisrael, everything that Hashem did to Moshe, Asher Hotzi Hashem es Yisrael b'Mitzrayim. And he brings Chosei Moshe, brings Ashes, he brings Tzipor Ashes Moshe Acher Shilucheha, Veshnei Boneha, he brings together, he's reuniting the family, Asher Sheba Echad Gershai, etc., because he was a ger. Hayisi Baratz Nachri, Sheba Echad Eliezer, Vayava Yisrei Choshe Moshe Uvana v'Ishta Moshe al Midbar Sher Hu Chadeshem Har Al Moshe, and Yisrei comes to the Midbar. Vayetze Moshe Likras Chosno. The Torah reports as follows: Vayisaper Moshe l'Chosnes Kol Asher Asa Hashem l'Far l'Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu reports to Yisro in detail of exactly what took place since he left. Everything, Alodos Yisrael, as far as Jews are concerned, as Kol Hatzla Asher B'Tzasa B'Derech V'Yatzilei B'Hashem. Vayichad Yisrael Kol HaTov Asher Asa. And he said, Vayomer Yisrael, this was his statement, Baruch Hashem, Asher Hitzel Escha B'Yad Mitzrayim U'B'Yad Parei, Asher Hitzel Escha B'Tachas Yad Mitzrayim. This was his speech, I presume. Gave him a podium, and Yisro, the great Yisro, is making a speech, and his speech starts with Baruch Hashem. It's a speech. Asher Hitzel Eschem, he saved you. Miyad Mitzrayim U'Miyad Paro, Asher Hitzel Esa'am, Mitachas Yad Mitzrayim. What's the double lashon? You understand? Anybody understand the double lashon? Here's a speech. Baruch Hashem, that he saved you from the hand of Mitzrayim, from the hand of Paro, that he saved the people from the hand of Mitzrayim.
The individual as opposed to the 12.
So let's see. Ato yodati, says Yisrael. It's only now that I know. Ki gadol Hashem mikol Elohim. What a statement from a guy who's worshiping every avodah zarah that he can find. Not just worshiping, but who it gets to this point, says the Medrash, who atzmai avodah zarah.
Yeah.
He was being worshipped. I mean, there's a serious guru here, serious guy. Dalai Lama, comes to Dalai Lama, who atzmai avodah zarah. I don't know if he worships avodah zarah. He's an avodah zarah. Davar aneva. He comes and he's moda. Ato yadati. Now I know. Ki gadol Hashem mikol ha'olikim. Why do I know this? Why do I know this now? So kivadavar. Here's the lashon in the pasuk. Kivadavar asher zadu aleihem. I know it, says Yisro. Kivadavar asher zadu aleihem. Says Rashi. B'mayim dimu la'abdam. V'hem nevdu b'mayim. What do I see here? I see here that water was the way that Paro tried to kill the Jews. Throwing the water. See, the astrologers of Paro said that the Mashiach Shel Yisrael is going to be killed with water. That's the way to deal with it. So he's throwing everybody into the water. I don't have to describe for you, I don't have to act out to you what that must have been like for Jewish mothers and Jewish fathers, to have a child. I mean, the water, though, I don't think anybody went to the beach to relax. The water was full of blood, and the water was full of our kids, and the water became the material of nightmares. Mayim was considered the oh my gosh, the water. And now the water, b'diuk, saved Klal Yisrael.
Water was one of their gods.
Right, the water was one of their gods. So b'mayim dimu la'abda, this was what Yisrael observed, that the same water that was the nightmare of the Jewish people became the dream, became like now we're celebrating the water. Right? There's a Hasidic celebration for Kriyas Yamsuf, for dancing over water. Simchas Beis HaShoeva. It's like water became mayim b'sosai. Mayna Yeshua. So water turned over. This is the Sforno says, Ki badavar asher zadu aleim, ki hitzil es ha'am, he speaks it out so beautifully, ki hitzil es ha'am, that when Hashem saved the people, it was ba'oso hadavar atzmo asher zadu ha'mitzrayim aleim shal Yisrael. It was using the same shtickle that Pharaoh wanted to use to destroy the Jews. That's what saved the Jews. It's deeper than Mida Keneged Mida. It's deeper. Mida Keneged Mida means, okay, now the water is going to get you. They're saying that the Chachma of Hashem was that he took the very article of destruction and he turned into an article of salvation and Hatzalah.
Haman.
Like Haman, Menahafach.
Yeah.
So there was a, it's deeper than Mida Keneged Mida. There's a correct pasuk for this. Hafachti mispedi l'machali. The hesped gufa hafachti mispedi mispedi l'machali became a niggin of simcha. Machal is something you dance with. So dancing to my hesped. That's what you did. I always wondered about the little Pesach part, the Yitzias Mitzrayim, the Geulas Mitzrayim, Chatzois HaLayla was like so perfect, it was so meduyik. Everything was like a Kadosh Baruch was exactly at the right. There was a moment of Geula, and everything was right, and they got their money, and everything was so perfect. The whole story of Yitzias Mitzrayim, so the Torah reports there was one fluke, and the fluke was that Lo Hispik Petzekum Shalav Yisayim that the bread couldn't rise. It's almost incidental to the story, but it was a fluke. Like Ba'atzem, like when we're celebrating Pesach, like I would have, if I would have invented this holiday and written this, I would assume that we should all eat like Wonder Bread on Pesach. Wonder Bread. It's like miraculous wonders. Like do something nisi, like something that's grown and puffed, and, as opposed to the thing that didn't work out becomes the main factor, the main feature of the Seder, and you have to eat it like an Aved, a pelvic thing. And the emissaries that besides for it being the fluke of Mitzrayim becomes like the main feature of Pesach. Besides for that, like sort of kasha. I don't know if it's a kasha. I guess the teretz is obvious, but it is a kasha. It is something interesting that the fluke becomes the celebration. Afachta mispedi labachali. But you realize, I'm sure, that when we hold up the matzah the first time, we say halach ma'anya diachla avasana de Mitzrayim. That it wasn't about Yitzias Mitzrayim. The lechem that we're eating, the matzah that we're eating, is not about the lechem of the cherus. It's about the lechem of the oni, lechem oni, because so the Sforno also says that the Mitzrayim, that they never had time to let their bread rise. Not only when they were leaving Mitzrayim did they not have time to let their bread rise, they never had time. 200 years they never had a piece of bread, because to have a good piece of bread takes time. You have to have time. It's a luxury issue to have time. So, and then the Sforno adds, and the Mitzrayim liked it that way because matzah is very, as we all know, matzah is very, very condensed, and when you eat matzah, it takes a very, very long time to digest, and it's a sort of an avdus unto itself. To eat matzah, like the tzimtzum hadavar, the body can't even process it for a long time. So we ate matzah. So here's the thing: like for 200 years, we're eating this darn matzah. So the first thing that should happen when we go Pi-chayros is like l'chol ha'pachos, let the bread rise, and then the Seder makes sense. You know why we're eating such white, beautiful, risen, puffed up Wonder Bread? Because we're free now. But the answer is ki badover asher zadu aleihem. This was Yisro's understand. Unbelievable that not just the nightmarish water that killed your kids saved you, but we're going to celebrate it with the lechem oni, and we're going to eat lechem oni and a seder with behaseva to show that we're free, and the lechem oni becomes the representation of our chayros.
It's only lechem oni at the beginning of the seder.
Okay.
Later
on, we keep the lechem oni and we use it for freedom, right? So, but it becomes a freedom prop, but it's still lechem oni.
The freedom prop
because now we ate it with the Korban Pesach. Al matzah subrarim techlu. But the fact of the matter is, it's a davar asher zadu aleim. It is a davar asher zadu aleim. Yeah. So I think this is what comes around. Here's the story. Just like it's freedom. So we came to the Pi-chayros, and we vayashuva Pi-chayros. It's the last line here in Reb Tzadok. Shamati remez vayashuvu vayachanu lifnei Pi-chayros. That they weren't just arriving at the place called Pi-chayros. Shetzarech lisyashev ulechanois koidem sheyotzi piv lecharus ledaber kechol ha'oila al ruchai. The Rebbe's is that shetzarech lisyashev ulechanois. Stop, wait, absorb, think, meditate. You're free. Mamish the steps of Tzhuva. What's the final step of Tzhuva before you know you've arrived? So the Rambam says that after you go through a whole Mahi HaTshuva, Yazoi v'choy techetoi, Yasirenu mimachshavtoi, Yigrenu b'liboy shlo yaseh aloy. I don't believe this is the famous 3 steps that they say. You have to have Harata al-avar, Kabbalah al-aseh. I think what he's saying is, there's steps here. Yazoi v'choy techetoi. First of all, behavioristically stop doing the chet. You want to stop drinking, smoking, whatever your addiction is. First thing is stop doing it. Like even fake it. Just stop doing it. Second thing is v'yasirenu mimachshavtoi. Get it out of your machshava also. Stop fantasizing about it. It's the next step. At least I'm not doing the chet, but stop fantasizing. So you're going from the outside, which is my behavior, to the machshava. Work yourself inside, inward. I believe this is what the Rambam say. Next step is v'yigbar b'libai shelo yaseh aloy. So I'm starting with my maisa, I'm going to my machshava, and then the Rambam says I'm going to my lay. Internalize that which you're doing. And decide in your heart, not your mind, not just your actions. Actions means, like I'm gonna every time I do this Avera, I'm going to put my finger into an electric socket or something. I'm just going to, okay, that's a good start. But it's not deep. It's not deep. So, but it's a place to start. So the first place you start is in Maisa, then you go to Machshava, then you go to Lake. That's what the Rambam is saying. Shnamar, this is the pasuk Yaziv Rosh Hadarka B'Shav and Machshavoisa. B'chein, what's the next step after that? Yisnachem al Shofar. Mazah. Yisnachem al Shofar. Next step. I already went from my hands to my mind to my heart. Now, Yisnachim al sha'avar, because the tendency would say, okay, let's go weiter, let's go further. Let's go further, let's forget about it, let's not talk about it, let's not think about it, let's not go there anymore, stay away from the French Riviera, stay away from it. And Yisnach, no, so the Rambam Yisnachim, such an interesting, we know Yisnachim means to have charata. By Yinachim Hashem Haskal Kol Asher Hosa by the Mabul, but it also, we know, it means lashon of nachama, lashon of comforting. And what it means to say, I believe, is now your job, next step, well, now that I've done this, my next job is to kind of like deal with the past and make peace with the past. So comfort means that you've resolved two opposing feelings. That's what I was, that's what I am now, this is totally non-integrated. So v'yisnachem, I'm sorry, al shahavar shenamar ke'achrei shuvin nichamti v'achrei hoidi sipakti al-yerech, and v'yoyid alav yodea talumais shelo yashuv lozeh chet lo'olam. If I've gone through this 4-step process of Maisa, Machshava, Leiv, Nichum, 4 steps that I believe the Rambam is identifying here. So now you'll have a Metzias of Yoid Olav. The Rambam doesn't say Ad Yoid Olav. Yoid Olav, at this moment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself testifies. Which HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Yodea Olav, he doesn't say Hashem. Yodea Talumais. He who knows all deep hidden things, meaning he who sees the process within me, understands that this guy is never going to go back to that chet. Might start a new process, but this guy, as he stands right now, has no connection with that chet because he went through this internally. Shnemar brings a pasuk. The Yodea Talumais, Daika. Yodea Talumais, who knows the hidden things. Says the Rambam at the end of this halacha, one more thing. V'tzarech li'svadois b'sfasav. Now you have to say vidui b'peh. V'loimar, what do you have to say? In yonois elu shegamar b'libai. All of this process you have to say Allah. You have to articulate it. So means halachically that if somebody's standing on Yom Kippur, and then comes the process that he doesn't do it right, out of order. The order is I do Tzhuva, maybe the whole Elul, maybe the whole year, maybe on that moment, I don't know. But you do the Tzhuva. Tzhuva requires an ending of the Maisa, a gemurah das, a gemurah halev, a nichum, al ha'avar. Then all of that is articulated. If not, it's one of the viduyim where you say al chet shechatanu l'fanachem, the vidui peh. So that's which is comes in a very perfect place. Means I'm starting with my mouth, I'm ending with my mouth. So garnish. Not because it's insincere, because it's articulating a process. So I think the Rambam says v'loiber yadai zeilu shegamar b'libai. The vidui. So if it doesn't come to the metzias, to the madrega of dibur, if it doesn't come to the you don't have Pi-chayros. You have pitom. You have pisom and ramses. You're still in Evan. So the freedom goes through a process. Via shuvu, it gets us back. And now, hey, all of a sudden, b'davar asher zadu aleim. Those pyramids, to me, somehow represent freedom. The work that we've done somehow represents freedom. Pisai becomes Pi-chayros, which is manifested by the fact that our psychological world, that we can talk about it. The Holocaust is over. We can talk about it. It's something we could talk about without having to be right there and go right there again. Big madrega. I don't even know if it's a madrega that one should go through, except for psychological benefit. But it's a big deal. It takes generations.
Is that the whole process of the Seder itself? When we start with describing it, announcing it as the Lechamani.
And mitzkilas oiv de'avodah zara, how you obviously.
Yeah, Zara, and then we speak out the whole process, and the same Metzias, this matzah becomes
Freedom.
Freedom.
Pesach.
Then Hallel. Then Hallel.
Here's what we need to think about Homer. Pesach is a pun on the word Pesach. Pesach means Passover. Pesach, in this sense, means the freedom of speech in our Kabbalistic terms. But why does Pesach, this idiot of Pi-chayros, appear in the word Pesach, which refers to a very clear story of HaKadosh Baruch Hu passing over the Jewish houses and doing Makas Pi-chayros with the Goyim. So there's got to be a reason why, that the Arizal points out, that it's dafka, this word, Pesach means Pesach. Something to think about. Thank you. Gentlemen, by the way, we have this, I keep on announcing, this very important event that we're having tonight with the Chief Rabbi of South Africa and the Rabbi Wine, two fascinating, thrilling speakers that are speaking. We're not having it here, we're having it at the Beit Knesset Rabat Shalom on Dolev. 8:15 there is Marav, 8:30 is the talk men and women. No charge.
Yeah, share it too.